Welcome to this talk by Grace Anderson about her amazing concert tour in Germany. I'm Debbie Davis, and we have some people here who are actually on the tour. So let me highlight you. Welcome. Grace, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and how this happened?
Okay, hi guys. So good to see you. First of all, let me apologize for what's going on in my face. Body surfed into a wave that crashed me right into sand a couple of days ago. So I'm on the mend, but I do have a black eye. All right, so I am here to talk about my trip to Germany. For those of you that came with me, you know what that was like, and I hope to tell you a little bit about what went on behind the scenes. And for those of you that didn't come or may have been to Germany in different times, I hope to share with you what it was like and to talk about it as if you were there with me. Um, I think there are really three kind of areas I want to touch upon. First, the tour itself, how it came to be, and what we actually did, the places we visited. The second thing is just, I mean, gosh, what about Bach? You know, what is it when you mention Bach cello suites? It's such a huge um, area to dig into. And by the way, who would ever want to go to a concert to hear a single person play so many Bach suites? I mean, it's a little bit of egomaniac, right? I mean, when we have so many recordings available already, or even the new interpretations with tap dancing, why would you want to put your butt down to hear someone play for a whole hour of, you know, that person's very interpretation? So, and so part three is how I kind of overcame that mentality to turn this into a really positive and rewarding, and I think really a life-changing experience for me. So let me just go over the tour, a kind of overview real quick, and so we know kind of what we did. So the tour was back in April, 2 months ago, and it was sponsored by WDAV at Davidson College. It's a radio station with a really healthy classical broadcast and following. Um, and this idea actually came from my dear friend Alan Black. As you may know, he is a fabulous cellist that led the Charlotte Symphony. He was the principal cellist for, gosh, decades, I think, 30 plus years. And he was getting ready to retire, or actually to step down from the principal role. He's actually now as a cellist in a section. But part of his plan for, you know, sort of post-principal job was to realize his lifelong dream of playing Bach cello suites in the very places that Bach taught, worked, and lived. So he and I befriended each other, oh gosh, 3 or 4 years ago. And when he mentioned this idea to me, because I invited him to play some Bach cello duets with me in the cello workshops I led, and he said, you know, these Bach duets are really fun. We were reading Bach duets from Fred Sherry's cantatas. So Fred Sherry, if you don't have this book already, I highly recommend it. And I'll put it in the link so you guys can just click on it. It's called 25 Cello Duets from Bach's cantatas. So we read through some of those duets from Fred Sherry's book. And he thought, you know, what if we took this on tour? And, you know, let's do the Bach suites. I thought if he was completely out of his mind because, I mean, wow, like going to Germany to play them seemed like such a daunting task to prepare for. And how do we even get ourselves and our cellos to even fly there? So he approached the people at WDAV and he was able to get them to sponsor this trip for us. And for those of you that came, so Jang and Lee, thank you so much for being part of this to help us realize a lifelong dream. So to give you, oh, and by the way, check out my shirt. That shirt was purchased at Leipzig at Bach's Thomas Church. All right, so I want to give you a brief overview of sort of what our tour entail. So I'm going to share the screen with you. And by the way, I just want to mention, let's definitely leave time for question and answer because I have a lot of questions for you. Um, uh, you know, people that do play cello as well as people that don't. So, and anytime you have questions, just type them in the chat, either privately to me or Debbie, and like we'll get them answered. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen to show you where we all visited. So here's a map of Germany. So I just pulled this up on the internet. Um, and this region, Saxony-Anhalt, Thuringia, and Saxony, that's where Bach spent his entire life. So he didn't travel very much. I mean, I didn't know this, but you know, he kind of hung out around this area. So our first stop was here, Weimar. Then we went to a smaller town named Mulhausen, which was like up here a little bit. Actually, I'm sorry, Mulhausen is a little bit west. That's where Bach held one of his first jobs before he went to Weimar. So Mulhausen was before Weimar. And then we also went to this little town called Arnstadt, which is a little south here. And that's where Bach actually fell in love with his first wife and had his very first job. And then, of course, we went to Köthen Castle. That's where Bach was employed by Prince Leopold, and he wrote most of his instrumental works here. So Köthen is here. And then our last stop was Leipzig. So it's in this area. All right. And in terms of what we played, Alan and I share the 6 Bach suites. He played 3 of the suites and I played the other 3. Then we also play some duets. And I have some links to share with you because I've finally compiled the videos. The duets we played were a set from the cantatas. And as you know, Bach wrote these cantatas, a lot of them were Lutheran hymns, but the cello or the cello piccolo was responsible for doing a lot of the colorations and keeping the beat going. So there's a rich repertoire of music for that cellist in the orchestra. And so Alan and I would switch roles. One would play the bass line and the other person would play that juicy cellist violoncello piccolo part. And the other duet we did was
Grace, I'm sorry to interrupt, but am I the only one the video's cutting out on?
Sorry?
Am I the only one the video is, that the sound is cutting in and out for? Am I the only one?
I don't know. Are you guys experiencing my sound?
I'm fine. My sound is fine.
So is mine.
Okay. I can try to increase my my output volume is quite high. So Jane, try to go to your sound settings and make sure the output volume is high enough. I'm going to increase my
I would if I knew where that is. I don't know where that is.
Okay. Allow me to share this real quick so we can take care of that. So if you're in, oops, sorry. Do you see this right here? Audio, where my mouse is? On the left corner was audio.
I can't see any.
You've gone out of screen sharing.
Am I out of
It's all black.
Oh gosh. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Can you see me now?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now where is my Okay. You see this little microphone here? Where's this audio? Click on that and the little arrow next to it, like I did, and go down to audio settings. And once you're to audio settings,
all I see is your map. Just go on. No, I don't have that. So just go on. That's
okay. I'll speak a little louder.
I don't want to take any more time.
All right, that's okay. That's okay.
No,
all
it's
right.
not the loudness. You're going in and out. You're cutting in and out.
I see. I'm sorry.
That might be
go ahead.
Bandwidth's problem.
Okay. Okay, so I'll go ahead and proceed forward with my sort of tour highlights, but I want to pause here just real quick. Anything you're dying to know, like right away? You want me to jump in first or kind of go down the tour and what we played?
I'd like to hear it in chronological order, more or less.
Fabulous. Good. That's because that's how I organized it. So finishing what I was saying before we fixed the mic issue, I was just saying the other set of duets we played were the Goldberg variations. Now, of course, we didn't play the entire 1 hour long Goldberg variations, but we chose variations that sounded decent for two voices. But even then, as you know, the two voices do this, and when your cello range is this much, you really have to pick and choose when you want to kind of pick things back up. And I actually gave you saved some musical examples that if we get really technical when we get to that part, I can show you what we did in terms of arranging music to make it sound good for cello, two cellos. All right, chronological order. So we had spent 10 days altogether in these regions in Germany. Our first 3-4 days or so were just touring Weimar, the downtown, the library, and I have some pictures. Let's go to the pictures. All right, so the concert didn't come until day 4 or day 5. So let me go to the pictures. So let me go back to sharing again. Bear with me.
There you are.
Hey, I'm back. Okay. Add cloud photos.
Yeah, you were a black screen.
Are you seeing this now? Okay. So that's just like our day 1. We were totally jet lagged. We arrived. Actually, can you tell what city this is? I guess you have been there to recognize this Rathaus, which is the city hall. This is actually Munich, so it's none of Bach's dwellings, but this was where the airport had popped us out. So we spent our first night here just to get over jet lag.
Yeah, that's the famous church where one of the popes was from.
Really? This right here? This right here? Yeah, that's
the pope who resigned. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so much history in these places. And sorry, we haven't even gotten to the big buildings yet, but you must look here because that's your white asparagus. If you have not had white asparagus, they are like bamboo shoots and so delicious. But anyway, this is still Munich. And of course, I'm just getting you guys hungry and it's dinner hour, but here's a German bread. It looks really good. And here's a beer house, also in Munich. All right, so here's our finally our train to Weimar. So from Munich to Weimar is a good 3+ hours ride. And because we carried a bunch of equipments, recording mic stands, and of course our cellos, and change of clothes and shoes, we had a lot of luggage. And I'm so glad that we have cellists of each other because we know how to lift weight. Yes. So, changing trains and going from stop to stop was quite a trip. So we had to take this very happy photo that we had arrived. All right, moving on. So now we're in downtown Weimar. So if you can follow my arrow here, and Lee and Janelyn, this is gonna take you down memory lane. So as you walk down, this is kind of a downward hill slope. You see this P here? That's a car park, yeah? And you can make out, it says Hotel Elephant. All right, Hotel Elephant is this white building here. And that was actually, it's a very historical building. And later on, unfortunately, it was Hitler's favorite dwelling. And this is the civic center where he gave that rousing speech. So this place is steep in history, after Bach as well. So that's the Bauhaus. So as you walk down here, that car park was where Bach lived. That's where he, two of his sons, the oldest sons, were born. And I'm going to take you closer. I'll get a closer screenshot. There's a plaque here on this wall that says exactly that. This is a night view of the same thing, as you can tell. Here's that. I'm just showing you where Bach's house was, and it burned down. Otherwise, it would still be there. And you can see this little musical tubes here. And if you step on a pedal, you hear one of Bach's organ works. So here's that sign on the wall. Here stands the house of Johann Sebastian Bach from that year to this year. So he was there for almost 10 years. And here were born Friedrich Bach on this day, and Philipp Emanuel Bach. And this was right next to our hotel. And now I'm standing right in front of our hotel taking a picture of that civic hall. And here's a kind of view of what that Weimar main square is like. I'm just taking around. Here is a statue to commemorate the dates he was there. And this is our group. Jane Linson here. There you are. And here's Lee. Yep, in front of the elephant. Yeah. Okay, so now let's get into some music. So we were treated not just to historical sites, but plenty of music other than just what Ellen and I had to play. And so before we even played our first concert, we were treated to this private concert by this fabulous trio. This woman here is like the head, I forgot now, but she's the head of a Bach festival there. And this woman, her name is Lina Tourbonet. She is Spanish, but she's all over Europe. She's the concert mistress of Le Concert des Nations, led by Jordi Savall, among other, Baroque orchestras. And she also plays modern instrument. And this guy I know less about, but I actually saved a little bit of footage because I wanted to just let you know, have a taste of kind of the music we heard. So. Yes, so that was sort of the quality of music we were treated to after lunch. And we were the only people in the audience. It wasn't like, like we had to travel somewhere to hear this amazing music. Now, the next set of few pictures, you remember this? Yeah, you're laughing. The pictures are from the little town of Arnstadt, and this is where Bach's father had his first job, and Bach held his very, very first job as organist there. And this is a statue of Jan Bach. There he is. And I remember looking very closely, you could see his nipples there, and he was known to be sort of a rebel rouser. So yeah, there we are. And this is also the town. I think it was my very favorite part of the tour because we were able to follow the footsteps of Bach in where he fell in love with Maria Barbara, his first wife. And I have a picture of that where he and Maria Barbara had made their first home. So I'm down the street, and do you recognize this? It says Thuringia, Bach. I don't know what it says, but this little church here is one of two churches in this tiny town of Arnstadt. The other church is much bigger and ornate. This one was for poor people to go. And because it was smaller and for poor people, it's made from wood. And so the reverb and the sound quality of music there is so good. And that's where we were treated to our second concert. Here's that view again, and we call this the Bach Church. And there's a huge fountain in front of it. This hotel here, this green building, is where the Bach family would hang out, would party. And the Bach family...
Can you hear the sound?
My sound?
No, I'm sorry. I wanted my husband to hear it. I had my earplugs on.
Okay. Yeah, this is where Bach family would party. and more scenes from Arnstadt. And here it tells you that this was the Bach church. He worked there. Yeah, he worked there for 4 years from here as his first job as organist. He was employed as an organist. Okay, so this right here, I have to tell you, was the highlight of the entire tour for me. Because up till now, I was completely wrapped in my own head about, gosh, I'm about to play Bach, you know, and what am I going to do? I need to be in a hotel and be warming up and be practicing. You know, I need every minute that I have. But this concert got me to come out of my head. So this was a concert of the Stuttgart Bach Academy, and the conductor, his name's Hans Christoph Rademann. Do you guys know him? Yeah, I highly recommend check out his recording because I didn't know him either. But this concert, because as you know, this past year was the 300th year of the St. Matthew's Passion. Yeah, so everywhere there were celebrations of the three centuries of this great work, and so this Bach church was no exception. There were concerts put there throughout the summer. And so we caught this concert, and you know, of course, I had to get some footage. So I'm going to show you a little bit of the footage, but you're going to see mostly just like my hand or the bag, but you're going to hear what they sound like. So that, and they sang 3 Bach cantatas like this. It was absolutely phenomenal. And this the cellist here was like, he was my favorite, and with the soprano and tenor as well. I mean, it really felt like music from the heart. And it was from this point on that I made in my mind that that's just what I'm going to do. I'm just going to play from my heart and let it be whatever the truth is. Here's a little view of the So to sum up, after experiencing these 2 concerts and watching the German audience, like young and old, were completely rapt attention, I felt Bach was not just something they're proud of, but also that it kind of speaks their language. Yeah, it speaks their soul. So it was with that feeling that I went into my first concert the next day. Here's the church at Mulhausen that Alan and I played our first concert. So it's
you forgot the chocolate they gave us, Grace.
Oh yeah,
you forgot those good chocolates they gave us.
Yeah, we had the Bach chocolates. So yeah, this is Mulhausen. This church is called Divi Blasi. It translates to Blaise the Divine, the Divine. So as I get closer, you're going to see just how massive this church is. It was built in the 13th and 14th century by Teutonic Knights. And the height of this, I mean, I don't know, you can guess, five stories. And so that's all good and beautiful until you get inside and you start realizing, oh my gosh, there's so much reverb. If you played at Duke Chapel, I have not, but you know, if you have played there, you probably can identify with this phenomena. So this is the view looking out of where we played. And I'm tuning the cello. Why? Because first of all, it's freezing in there. It's about barely 50 degrees. And also to Stephanie's suggestion, I put on, Stephanie, thank you for the suggestion, 2 semi-gut strings for the bottom 2. They were the olive strings. So they kept going out of tune. I'm warming up here. Warming up. And this is us playing. And if you're interested, I have video footage of one of the Bach cantata duets, which I can share with you. Oh, okay. So, so here I want to pause actually, hang on. I want to show you, this is very funny because I filmed, okay. So a couple of days or maybe a week or two before I left for Germany, I made myself go into a big space and recorded playing through the suites. It was just, you know, my session of just being able to actually do it. So this is my recording of the then North Carolina E flat prelude. So just take a look at this. All right, so would you say that's pretty speedy? Yeah, it's not slow. All right, so and that had been the tempo that I practiced. But when I got to this church, all right, this is my concert take now. You're gonna hear me play the same piece. So you get the point. There's a whole lot of reverb. And I honestly was not prepared for that reverb. And that was the slowest tempo I've ever played that piece. And I really had no choice because had I played it at the faster tempo, Jang and Lee, you guys would have heard just a blob of notes. So, all right. Let me just take a quick look to see if, okay. Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. You guys read that? It's the 300th anniversary of the St. John's Passion. I'm sorry, I say St. Matthew's. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Well, Stephanie, I would have loved to hear you. That it must have been so glorious. Okay. So moving forward, and you know, I have links to share with you, which I'll do maybe at the end, so you'll get them all in one chunk. I would love to share the link of this cantata movement called Ach, bleib bei uns. It's from cantata number 6. All right, so moving forward, we are now done with Moorhausen and some more food photos. This right here is very German. Do you remember this meal? These are potato dumplings, and this is like a giant pork leg. But anyway, this is a meal fit for, I think, 3 people, but I think I ate it all. All right, our second concert took place in the Curtin Castle. And very sadly, most of the grounds were burned down to the ground. Only one big building remains and maybe like other sub buildings, but this one was the one that was the most, presentable. And our tour guide showed us the keyboard that Bach would have his sons play, and this thing is movable like a suitcase, and it sounded wonderful. Here's a viola da gamba. Okay, so we did not play in the Hall of Mirrors. This is the Hall of Mirrors in the Curtin Castle is where Bach had staged his orchestral concerts, like the Brandenburg concerts. We didn't play there, but we warmed up there and took a lot of pictures. There's some pictures taken. Now we played here. This was the chapel. And as you may know, Prince Leopold was a Calvinist, so Bach did not write Lutheran church music at all there, and that is one of the reasons they said he wrote so much instrumental works, because the Calvinist boss here didn't need all that church music. And I found this space to be very cello friendly. And here is when we played our Goldberg variations. I kind of reduced them in my iMovie into like little chunks. So I'll share that link with you too. They're really fun. coming out of the castle. And then finally, our third concert took place in Leipzig. This is the St. Thomas Church, and here is the statue of Bach. This is in Leipzig, just very close to our hotel. Here's a statue of Gunther Schuller. Okay, I included this photo, these two, because this church, the St. Peter's Church, was actually the church where the peaceful protests started that resulted in the tear down of the Berlin Wall. It was here where these young university students gathered and held candles to protest and say, we want this wall taken down. So, okay, here we had just arrived in Leipzig, and our first stop, Alan's pointing behind him because that's where the St. Thomas Church was. And I have to tell you, we arrived there, but didn't perform until 2 or 3 days later. But I felt sort of the criminal visiting the crime scene. I went there maybe 3-4 times a day. And you could tell signs everywhere, Bach Festival, you know, the same church. Yeah. And this is the interior of the church. One of the stained glass windows has Bach's picture. Here I caught footage of and that place is full of music. Every time I've walked in, someone is practicing something or there's a concert going on. So here is just an organist. Yeah, he's warming up. I'm standing in front of Bach's grave. That's the town square in Leipzig, and that's my daughter who came. Yeah, here's inside the church again. And here, another organist. And this one I would like you to see. It's the Thomas Boys Choir warming up for their concert the next day. Okay, so guys, by this point, I have felt that the St. Thomas Church was full of musical activities, and I was gonna have to play in this church. You know, it was such a weird dichotomy to feel this tremendous sense of responsibility. I want to do the right thing, and on the other hand, to be able to kind of let my preparation take over and just to really enjoy the experience. And I think for those of you that perform regularly, I think you come to that bridge all the time. And I think at the end, it's a choice you have to make, yeah? And I think if we cannot get outside of our heads, it's no good. And so you have to take that little bit of risk. And risk I took because given the tight schedule of this place, we had literally half an hour to warm up and set up. And that's shared between Alan and me. So our schedule, we were told that we would have 2 hours to have the place, right? And between 4 and 6. And but by the time the St. Thomas Boys Choir concert had ended, and everybody, you know, the audience from that concert filed out, it was like, you know, 4:15. So we set up these mics and everything, warmed up. So when I sat here, this is a picture of me warming up. You can tell Alan's back there because he had warmed up his part. My warmed up was less than 5 minutes. I played through the Sarabande of the C Suite once without repeat, and the opening 3 bars of the prelude. And I just wanted to I didn't want to run out of time was my main thing. And so I continued warming up in a room upstairs while Alan played, and how I wish I had heard him play, but I felt that I really needed to keep playing. But the wonderful and weird thing happened when I actually did come out and play. um, it, because I had very little time to warm up, I had not gone through all my movements. So when I started playing, for example, the jig movement of the C suite, I had practiced it quite fast. Something like dun 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 dun. But I realized the space did not want me to play this fast, and I could tell that this fast I was losing some of the finer details. So as I went along, I actually just made that choice. I said, look, I'm going to be friendly to the space and to the audience. I made the choice of taking a little time between the phrases, and in the end to kind of drop down to a click or two slower. And I'm happy to share that with you. Nothing, no shame about that. It's definitely not a recording that I would say, well, this is it. But it just shows that I basically adapted to the space. And I think here, this was the concert when we had a sizable German audience, aside from the people that came along with us. And so I felt by this point that I got to know Bach, the person, a little bit, and I was able to really let go. And let me just stop sharing so you can see my face. So I have to say, I really had one of those experiences of flow where I felt I could do no wrong. I felt I was being playful, just playful, like the piece would, like C major suite is playful. Yeah, it's very weird, but it did happen to me. And both Alan and I discussed what it felt like. And I think he experienced the same thing, actually. He played the D minor suite, suite number 2 that day, and he felt really peaceful with his performance. And I think having Bach's tomb in front of us may have to do with it. I think for me, it was maybe the German audience that was there. And speaking of German audience, the next day when I was at the train station, a couple came up to me and they acknowledged that they had come to my concert and congratulated me. So I felt great about that. Yeah, so let's see if I have any more photos. No, I think, oh, well, I have, other side photos, but I can stop it with a photo there. Yeah, in Leipzig, I have to say it's just full of music. I have 2 other footages, which I can play for you later or not, of street musicians. One of them is a saxophone player playing Bach, and it sounds phenomenal. And the other one is a woodwind trio playing the one of the Mozart symphony movements, and they sound phenomenal too. So, all right, I'll pause here, wait for anyone to sort of ask me questions. And I assume you probably want to hear about how I prepare for all this. Yeah? Do you guys want to ask any questions right now?
Yeah, do tell us how you prepared.
Okay, so let me just get my bearing here. Okay, so I learned that we were going on this tour about October. So 6 months before we go, when Alan said, Grace, we're a go, like, get cranking. So I booked concerts to make sure that I have enough run-throughs and performance opportunities to actually run through whole suites. And I was responsible for playing the 3rd suite, the 4th suite, and the 6th. And stupidly, I played the 3rd suite first because I thought, oh, this one I know, it's easy. So I started playing the 3rd suite and I performed it in December. But then and I went to Peru in between, so there was a little bit of taking time away from Bach. But in January is when I really went into high gear. I got out my 6th suite again, and I've realized that prelude is one of the earliest Bach movements I learned. I learned it in high school. So I know that prelude pretty much inside out. But I also learned that that's a piece that's a very high maintenance prelude. As you know, the sixth cello suite was written for 5-string cello, which Stephanie Weil has one, and let me try. But I found the 5-string cello incredibly difficult to play, or at least her cello, and the one that I tried at Sheenie's workshop. Sheenie's a luthier in Greensboro. I found the 5-string cello sounded less full than the full 4-string cello. So for some time I was really dithering, do I go with the 5-string or the 4? But when it was January and our tour was in April, I really didn't have time to mess with that. I messed with tuning. So for the 6th suite, I liked the 415 tuning. That's the note A at 415 hertz or kilohertz. And then I also got going with the E flat suite around that time. So, and I sort of got into the schedule because I really was training for the Olympics, because the sheer volume of music. Yeah. And when it comes to cello suites, like I said, who wants to hear my version? Like, why me? Like, when there's so many different versions out there. I really had to stop listening to recordings. In fact, the only recording I listened to and truly admire and feel like I can listen to it any time of the day is by Rachel Podger. And so I loved her recording. But that's it. I practice like 2 hours in the morning, and I knew that I would be solving problems then. So when I'm solving problems, I mean, okay, I want this phrase to go a certain way, but I'm running out of bow. When it makes sense to change it here. Now, wait a minute. The score doesn't say to change the bow here. The score says, let's slur this whole thing. Does it really mean that that's the bowing? Or, these considerations of how to articulate something. And my tendency is to over-articulate, kind of like I like to say, a dog peeing in every bush. And for the audience, they don't want to hear you dissecting the piece and not putting it back together. So I learned that I have to spend more time to put something back together after having dissected. But then when I put things back together, many times I have to take it apart again to say, well, it was too much together. It didn't have enough highs and lows. So I really had to look at the structure of the piece. And in fact, for the E flat suite, so we're talking about the prelude of the suite now. Now, Bach's preludes are a different beast than the other movements. All the other movements are dance movements with a certain meter. But the preludes, they're metered, but they keep going, right? There are a lot of notes. They all look the same across the page. So with the E flat suite, I had to take some colors, and I would use red for angry or something intense, and light blue for like the opening, which is very open sounding, and yellow when there's action, going somewhere. But anyway, I color coded this thing, and I found that it helped me to think in just chunks, big sections, or else I devolve into my dog peeing in every bush mentality. And so I would practice 2 hours in the morning, and that would be the problem solving phase. And then in the afternoon, usually I'm busy teaching or with the kids. And then in the evening, if I'm home, I would practice after the kids go to bed. So for an hour and a half, and that's when I would allow myself run throughs. And I would actually, because I'm already tired, to push myself to actually play entire suites through and record them. And during the day, the next day, when I'm driving the kids to school or something, I listen back. So it's this constant feedback that I have of how I was doing. And I have to say, Rachel Podger, who I really admire, came through to Winston-Salem to perform the violin partitas. She played 2 concerts in which she played through the entire thing. I talked with her afterwards and I said, how do you do this? She said, 1 note at a time, dear, 1 note at a time. I mean, that's nothing new, but that's really truly what it is. But she also reminded me to make sure I have the stamina to run through entire suites, or even 2 suites at a time, like chomp them up. And something about doing that to yourself, then your mind starts to remember, oh yeah, this is nothing to play through an entire suite. And you almost hear the next movement when you're ending the movement prior. Let's see. Oh, very important. So I played, I would say 5 or 6 concerts of Bach suites. Some of them with Alan, some of them just me. Also, I play for Stephanie, and she helped me so much with what I consider the hardest movement of all the Bach suites for me, which is the Allemande from the last suite, the 6th suite. And if you would allow me, I would love to share with you my music and just what it looks like. Here we go. This is the 6th suite. Let me scroll back. Okay. I couldn't use Anna Magdalena's beautiful handwriting. I just had Dover edition or a Baron writer, so I can fit everything into 2 pages. And here you don't see my color coding, but I had some colors going on. But you could see plenty of bowing changes. I mean, it's just maddening, really. Oops. This is one of these movements where sometimes you would see a huge slur over something like that. But yes, you could do that, but it would leave that one single note, one single bow. So I had to make some choices that would work for me and not necessarily what's on the score. What else? Yeah. Oh, speaking of large sections, I want to show you my prelude. So my prelude is spans over, this 1 page and then 2, 3. So you can see in the beginning, like I wrote these words like wandering. This is the E minor section. So it was like wandering, and here's tempest. This is where things are getting mad. Here, emerged from darkness, all right, because we're about to go into this happy G major section. I put a smiley face there. And this is the pedal tone when Bach is building up. This is the part of the prelude where the high notes keep going higher, but the bottom note remains this first note of the bar, A. So A is the pedal tone. All right, so this pedal tone really keeps going until here. And even then, you're still sitting on the A. So yeah, so that's sort of how I try to make big pictures out of these really dense, complicated looking scores. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's see what else to tell you. Yeah, I mean, just to wrap up, I've learned that in order for me to really ditch my nerves and play for the audience and from the heart, I found that 2 things really work for me. If I'm really curious about the music, I'm just, as I'm playing, for those of you that have reared teenagers, and I think all of you have, because I know you, maybe not Missy, Missy, you're young. But I just as we deal with teenagers, they act sometimes irrationally. And I remember reading one of the books on parenting that if you're curious about them, if you're just curious about why they act the way they do, and you approach them instead of like a parent to say, well, why don't you do this instead? But just to act curious, and they'll bend to your will. And I find that really works for me when I'm playing. Just as I'm going like, oh, look at that note, look at this, oh wow, so I found that helps. And the other thing that I think helps me is to think about the audience. I don't think that I'm playing, but I'm thinking, what are they hearing right now? And just like look at them, or kind of sense what their movements are. So I'll pause here. So I imagine you have a lot of feedback or things to say back to me.
I sent you a question.
Okay.
Did you see my question?
Okay.
I chatted with you.
Okay, so the question is why I chose to use music with only 2 of the suites. Okay. I did use music for Thomas Kirche as well. I did.
I didn't see it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad, because the music stand was a nuisance when I look back at the, yeah, sometimes, yeah. And yeah, that's actually a very good question. I came very, very close to not using music. And in hindsight, I should have gone without music. It would have, I think, allowed me to, yeah,
I
not.
thought you did. Sorry.
So I would love to hear from those of you that perform. What are your experiences like to prepare something that you at first find daunting, and then you have to present it? And have you had this experience of flow where you go, that was weird. I couldn't do anything wrong, like, because, luck was on my side.
I'll answer your question about flow. I've had that happen to me, that feeling where you can do no wrong, maybe 5 times in my life, that you just, it's just there, and it lasts, and it's just this, it's like a drug, right? It's why we do it. And I've had other moments where I've had periods of it, but like a whole concert where that happens. And I just am waiting for the next one to happen. And I don't know, I don't know how to control it. So I understand where you went with that. And maybe sometimes when it happens in a big moment, like the moment where you might be the most scared, or the moment where it has the most import, and you somehow, it's so much to take on that you just let go completely. And I think letting go is when, if we could just do that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like very cathartic, because you're so pent up the preparation and energy that there's no choice but to let go anyway. That's pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that, and whether we're on the performing, like on the stage or in the audience, I think we all know that feeling when the performer really lets go, and we feel like this sense of humanity and connection to the performers, and it is like a drug, because I think we go through life so much not being present, and just having someone present for you for that 45 minutes of song, you feel this tremendous connection to them.
Yeah, I have had the experience of not actually remembering a performance after I've played it. And to me, that's the experience of not registering and judging how I was doing, that I was actually in the moment and not collecting memories of it, but actually living the moment. That to me is really a great feeling, and not that common either, because it's letting go of self-judgment and simply living with the music.
Yes. Yeah. I was thinking about each of the 3 concerts I played, and what I latched on to go through that experience. The first concert, as you recall, was in that big church, that really tall Gothic church in Mulhausen, the Blessed the Divine Church. I latched onto the organ. I mean, it was freezing in there. Janelyn and Lee, you guys can tell, remember that. It was absolutely freezing in there, so it was easy to focus on the discomfort of having to withstand that. But the organ that I assume Bach had played, but who knows, it probably was restored and, for all we know, replaced. But I heard the organ talking back to me, because I was playing the E flat suite, which was an organ piece pretty much. And I felt the organ was like, yeah, let's go. For the second concert at Curtin, by the time that Ellen and I played, we had toured the castle already. So I felt I got to know Bach. I felt like I got to know him like a brother. That he must have been, he loved his family. And, one of the reasons he resigned was so that his sons could get a university education in Leipzig, even though moving to Leipzig meant that he had to go down in the job ladder, if you will. His job was less higher in rank when he moved. Just understanding where he even just imagining where his room might have been, even though it was burned down, but just imagining him writing there and taking fresh pieces of paper, going to the court musicians and now play this in the Hall of Mirrors, which looked nothing like the Hall of Mirrors that we experienced. Right? We were told the mirrors were not there, the tall ceilings and the chandelier were not there. But so it's amazing that the imagination can bring that about us.
Can
And of
I
course,
ask-
the time. Yep.
I was going to ask a question. As you did your preparation, did you feel that your relationship to the cello itself was changing?
Not like in a huge way, but I want to kind of go back in time because Stephanie's here, and I just want to point out that before I had this workshop with Stephanie, as you may know, Stephanie and Liz Fields, two amazing players, ran a workshop called Early Music for Modern Instruments or Modern Players. Yeah. And this took place, the year I did it was at George Mason University. And I went there with my colleague, Sarah Johnson. And Sarah and I were playing in a Baroque group, Vivaldi and so on, but we were not really doing any kind of old instrument or anything authentic, if you will. But Stephanie's whole thing when she taught this to me was, hey, you don't need all this get up. You have to understand articulation. That's the first thing, right? And you have to understand like the bass line and the dances and all the things that makes music tick. And I felt I learned so much from her and Liz that it was from that fork in the road that my playing or relationship with the cello kind of evolved. But that workshop took place ages ago, definitely pre-COVID, right? So it's evolved for some time. Yeah.
I'll just say that working with people like Grace and her colleague is so amazing because they have these incredible techniques. And so all you have to do is just say one little thing and then they can instantly do it. And it's a way of, right? It's a way of thinking differently. I mean, that's the whole point with performance practice is to open up your palette of what you can do with your instrument. I mean, to me, that's the reason to do it. But
yeah, absolutely.
Grace is amazing.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. And I want to talk about, if that's okay, Stephanie, about the session that we had in March.
Mm-hmm. Which I learned a lot from as well. And I haven't had a chance to go back to that movement myself, but I'm really anxious to continue where you got and where we can go with it.
Yes. Yeah, the Allemande. And I consider, well, most of my performance, but definitely the Allemande, a work in progress because it is so rich. So what's happened is, the Allemande is rich with harmonies and turns, and it's very episodic, right? It feels like a soliloquy from the heart, but yet it's a dance, or it came from a dance, and we have to feel a sense of pulse. And in fact, I got together with a good friend of mine named Alban Gerhardt. When he came through town, he was in Raleigh to perform with the orchestra. And he and I grabbed lunch and pretty much spent a whole day together because I hadn't seen him for 20 some years and we used to be quite close. So we were talking about Bach suites and he said, oh gosh, he recorded them, but he couldn't stand listening to them again. And I thought, oh gosh, that'll be me by the end of this tour. But we also talked about what we thought was the hardest movement. And without me saying anything, he said the Allemande of the Sixth Suite. And we both agreed it is because that sense of pulse. For those of you who are not cellists, I don't want you to feel lost in this. So I'm going to go ahead and share this again so we can get into this nitty gritty of practicing here. Practice along with us. All right, here's the Allemande that we're talking about. So if you look at the meter, that's common time. So we'll just call that 4/4. So this is your first beat, downbeat. And second beat, you have 2E and 2E and third beat and fourth beat. And that's just the first bar, first line. And the second bar takes place of that line. So you can see how much goes on in the music. I mean, I think it took me a while to even make sure my upbeat was the right value, right? Could you see the upbeat being very tricky? That we would play this way too long, like an eighth note. Yeah, that I did that for a long time, right? And of course, that applies to this upbeat as well. So, and then of course, you have like things like this. So follow my mouse. You see how you've got these notes going on, dun da 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 dum da 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 dum. So you got to fit this chord in here, but move on here. So what I did when I played for Stephanie, I played this chord like a modern player playing, I don't know, Tchaikovsky would. I got my two little notes underneath right before the beat. I squeezed them in so that the top note, which I consider to be the melody, would pop out right on the downbeat. And when I listened back to my own playing this way, it sounded kind of forced, like almost like I was chomping the beats up or something. And so she suggested, hey, chords, this is the dance. Let's just land on the downbeat. So the bottom note here, as I go up the chord, go ahead and play that note on the downbeat. And like miraculously, that really works. So that was one of the big takeaways, Stephanie, from you. Yeah. And the other takeaway was just, things like this. You see how we have a low G and then a bunch of high notes coming up, right? And then now we go to hit this note F, or F sharp rather. So this G is hanging out here with nobody in his neighborhood until this F sharp comes along. And then the G comes along, and then the A comes along. So these are notes down in the bass voice. So when I'm doing all this stuff, this ornate stuff, that belongs to this harmony of G major. And so the idea was, however ornate you do this or time taking you do, you have to kind of look forward to the bass line. So follow the bass is sort of one of the guiding principles that Stephanie talked about. Yeah,
You
and so
have marked, what's marked in that one, that, what is it, 146? What's marked that looks like ED something? Oh, with the P, keep going. What is that?
it's right here. I think I wrote the word echo.
Oh, sorry.
This is loud, and these three little notes are echo. Yeah, and look at my indecision right there. Yeah, I think I was changing my bowing up until the last minute because, and I'm sure in my performance, I have completely changed my bowings as I went.
Yeah.
Just because you find yourself at the wrong side of the bow or not the way you plan it. But I honestly think all this practicing we do is so that we have the ability to do that, right?
Yeah, if you practice it 20 ways, then whatever happens in the moment, you have alternates.
Yes, that's it. That's it. Yeah. So yeah, that's the Bach suites in a nutshell. And I think ultimately, approaching the suites, if we are just scared of them because there's so many recordings out there and we feel that we're not going to have anything new to add or sound like anybody else, remotely amazing, then we're denying ourselves the opportunity to really enjoy these suites, because I think Bach wrote them with love. I mean, these were not something that he was necessarily commissioned to do, or not as far as I know, right? And you guys all know the story of the suites, that after Bach died, his manuscript was lost to time. And we don't have his manuscript. We just have his wife's and the organist counter.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so fabulous, so interesting, and in every possible way. Are there any other questions or comments?
I think it's extremely humbling.
Sorry?
I'd say it's extremely humbling for those of us that play for our own personal enjoyment. And it's really impressive the way you can, while I'm looking at that music, I'm remembering hearing you play some, and I'm thinking, that's her.
Well,
Thank you, Jack. That means a lot.
what an enviable experience, and you put so much of yourself into it. It's surely a high point.
Thank you so much. And before I forget, guys, I want to share a couple of things with you in the links, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right, let me pull them up and I'll just copy and paste. So give me a second. First, I want to share with you Fred Sherry's book on cantatas, and these are great, especially for cello workshops, or if you ever have a cellist friend to play them. And he says, look, learn both the top and the bottom. These are wonderful. Okay, so that's the Fred Cherry. And I have two concert videos for you. Here's the first one from cantata Ach, bleib bei uns. And the second one, I had to do like some editing in there because, so just don't be surprised that there are things cutting in and out. That Goldberg variations, we selected many variations. And so I only chose what I thought were the best parts. So that was some edited version, but I'll give you some concert highlights. And if you guys want to read about cello suites, two books that I read that I came across were really awesome. One was the book by Eric Sibling, where he's talking about how the Bach suites were found and just the very thin thread of history that let us end up with this rich music. So that's the book by Eric Sibling. Excuse me?
Come on.
And the last one I want to share is the book by Stephen Isserlis. He's hilarious, and the book is a fun, very fun read.
And where are you putting these?
Oh, I'm putting them all only to Jane. Okay, Jane, I'm sorry. Let me put this into my the whole chat. I was sharing that just. Okay, hold on. Let me make sure it's everybody. Hold on a second. Meeting group chat. Okay. I just shared one with you. Can you guys give me a thumbs up when you receive this one?
Ach, bleib bei uns.
Yes.
Grace, haven't you also arranged some of the violin, like the chaconne for cello?
Yes, I have played the chaconne in D minor from the violin D minor partita.
Wow.
I played that, I think at ECU or different places a couple of years back. And I definitely would love to play that one for you, and play it again. So, okay, I'm gonna. Did you get Fred Sherry's Bach
Yes.
Duets?
Yeah.
All right, two more. This book is by Stephen Isserlis. Very fun read, highly recommend. And Eric Sibling's book is also a very fun read. So there you have it.
Well, there's no way to thank you enough, and it's just been such an interesting evening. And send us more links. I'll put them in the newsletter so we can see the variations and all.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Grace.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.